One day, I flew up to his bedroom window. It's a natural history museum in there. He actually taught himself taxidermy at the age of 12. That room of his is a mess. Aquariums full of fish, habitat boxes, pressed insects, rocks, and all kinds of plants. Do his parents ever tell him to clean it up? No, his parents are both naturalists and encourage his interest in nature. Here in East Orange, New Jersey, there are a lot of birds to count. In fact, Will and his mom count migrating birds every autumn for the Audubon Society's annual migration count. 2 days ago, I saw him sitting there in his room with his pet owl, Moses. His father found that abandoned owlet and gave it to William to raise. He sketches him and writes notes in his journal. Listen to this. In a letter to his father who was often away, 8-year-old Will wrote, "I climbed the front yard tree the other day to get some robin's eggs. I put them in my mouth for safekeeping, but when I had a rough landing, I swallowed them." This is definitely a young naturalist in the making. At 5:30, a kiskadee shouted at the top of his lungs from the bamboos. And then the kiskadee splashed rather than flew through the drenched air. "Oh, hello. That's me he is writing about. Allow me to introduce myself. I am the Great Kiskadee. You must be the new research team. I hear you're interested in William Beebe. Come on, join me here on this branch. I've got plenty to tell you. Did you know that William Beebe was hired by W.T. Hornaday before he even graduated from college to be the assistant curator of birds at the New York Zoological Society? Pretty impressive, right? He worked for the New York Zoological Society for over 60 years. For 44 of them, he was the director of their tropical research program. During these years, he explored Mexico, Southeast Asia, and South America, where he encountered dozens of new species of birds, plants, mammals, and reptiles. It was here in Guyana in 1921, which was then known as British Guinea until 1966, that he developed a new system of studying natural habitats. You see, Beebe thought the scientific method of the times, which was to capture animals and take them back to lab study, was over. He wanted to shake it up a bit. Beebe thought it best to view animals in their own natural habitat. His method, which was to stake out an area in the jungle and then study it like crazy, from roots to treetops. Thanks to Beebe, this is how most scientists work in the field today. Listen to what he wrote about his experience with vampire bats. "One night, I made a special effort and with bared arm prepared for a long vigil. In a few minutes, bats began to fan my face. I breathed as quietly as I could. When I felt a tickling on my wrist, I knew my visitor was making for the arm which I had exposed. Slowly, it crept forward. It continued on my forearm and came to rest on my elbow. I imagined various sensations as my mind pictured the long, lancet tooth sinking deep into the skin and the blood pumping up. That man was the writing sensation of his times." Check out the September 22nd, 1932 New York Times. William Beebe was lowered beneath the waves in a 54-inch steel bathysphere off the coast of Bermuda. The whole thing was broadcast by NBC. The NBC announcer began by saying, "And now, from a new world, hitherto unknown to man." Listen to how Beebe described the technical business of the broadcasting. "My voice was carried through 3,000 feet of telephone cable from the bathysphere to the deck of the Freedom. On deck, the voices were picked up from a telephone wire and sent over to the receiving station in New Jersey. Finally, it made its way to the NBC studios in New York, where it was rebroadcast to radio listeners from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It was also sent to England to be rebroadcast over the BBC. Beebe wasn't alone. Otis Barton, the man who built and designed the bathysphere, was with him. And get this, both men were over 6 feet tall. Good thing they didn't try to stand up in that bathysphere. Both men believed that it would be best to view undersea creatures in their native habitat. Up until now, scientists had collected specimens and brought them up to the surface to study. But some of the organisms were too fragile and were destroyed because of the changes in water pressure. Somewhere around the 595 meter mark, there was a heavy swell in the water and their cable jerked. Can you imagine? Beebe cut his lip into his forehead. His voice was slightly incoherent. Somewhere around the 670 meter mark, both men developed severe pressure headaches, and Beebe signed off with the words, "Otis Barton and I bid you farewell from a depth of 670 meters beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean off Bermuda." You do realize this was during the Great Depression. People were clinging to American heroes. All across the country, families sat around in their living rooms listening to Beebe's broadcast. These men broke the record for the deepest underwater dive. Welcome to Simla! William Beebe purchased this land on the island of Trinidad in 1949 and turned it into a 265-acre tropical research station. He named it after India's summer capital, a place he explored while researching his 4-volume book called The Monograph of the Pheasants. You'll notice he didn't come to Trinidad to write about hummingbirds, but he did come here to retire in 1952 and wrote this book, Edge of the Jungle. Listen to who he dedicated the book to the birds and the butterflies, the ants and the tree frogs, who have tolerated me in their jungle antechambers. Nice, though he didn't mention me by name. I suppose he didn't want to single me out. Beebe encountered 97 native animals, 400 birds, 617 butterflies, and 2,200 species of flowering plants here in the reserve. Sadly, Beebe died here at Simla in 1962 and is buried in Port of Spain, Trinidad, but his passion for nature still lives on. Did you know that 306 papers have been published on the work done here? In February 1974, Simla was donated to the ASA Research Center, and today it remains an important hub for the study of botany. William Beebe was a great man. Some would say he was an American hero. He explored many parts of our world, from the Galapagos to Thailand, the Sargasso Sea to Malaysia, and Guyana to the depths of the Atlantic. Beebe encountered dozens of new species of birds and plants and left us their descriptions in his 20 books and many writings. In exchange for surrendering the luxuries of everyday living, spending long months away from home, encountering biting tropical insects, vampire bats, and stormy seas, William Beebe lived his lifelong dream. He gave us a new method of natural study, books and papers, a greater respect for female scientists, and knowledge of new species, and a heightened awareness of human impact on our environment. William Beebe once said, "To be a naturalist is better than to be a king." What do you think?